4.6%. CTU has come out saying unemployment increased demands a plan from the government. People are saying that they're expecting it to go above 5%.
Yeah.
What do you think, and what are we demanding from the government? What do we need to see?
Well, it would start if we just had a plan. We know that we're likely to see tens of thousands more people unemployed in New Zealand, and they're likely to be in particular groups. So we know we're going to have more young people unemployed. We already have greater numbers of Māori, of Pacific peoples, of people with disabilities who are unemployed, and we know they're going to grow. There's no plan to deal specifically with their needs. There's no plan to deal with the collapse in construction and an investment in infrastructure, which is leading people to move overseas. So that's why we see 85,000 Kiwis leave permanently. That's 1,500 a week who get on an airplane and never come back. So it's good to have a plan, because this is something that's actually foreseeable. There are so many things in government you can't sort of foresee, and they just happen and you've got to react. This is one of the few things you can actually say, well, let's get ahead of that. Let's do something about it. Unfortunately, we're doing exactly the opposite of what we should be doing right now.
Good.
The budget just put up tuition fees by 6%. What does that do? It stops people from entering tertiary education. We moved from first year free to last year free. Stops people from entering tertiary education. We've halved the support for apprentices to keep them in work. Apprentices are really important because during downturns, apprentices get laid off. That means they miss the ability to complete their education. It affects them for the rest of their life, and they go to Australia because they've got some skills and they head overseas. So it's good to have a plan. We can foresee these things. And from the demand side, we know there are lists of things we can and should be doing right now. You talked earlier about water. We've got billions of dollars of water infrastructure that we know needs building. The government stopped the building of 100 schools, a rebuild program for 100 schools a month ago. We know we have huge needs in health, be it in nursing, be it in the buildings, be it in everything else. We're just not meeting any of those needs. So there's huge demand that could be met, could be delivered. We know increasingly we have the workforce that could do that if we had the training and the education and the opportunities in place. Instead, we're choosing actively to do the opposite of what standard economics textbooks would tell you to do.
It's as you're talking, I'm thinking, it seems that if you see a downturn coming, what you want to do is figure out how to ride that downturn. And in my mind, I kind of go, where are those gaps that we could put people? And you've sort of mentioned this already, but if they drove construction into infrastructure, create jobs. If they drove more people into the health system, nurses, doctors, that kind of thing. Chewy mentioned a story a couple of weeks ago where nurses were offered a job and then that job offer was retracted, and also if we get more kids into university, because then they're not also going out to the workforce immediately to challenge people who are looking for full-time jobs. And I just wonder if we had a focus on those three things, more in university, driving the construction factor into infrastructure, and pushing more people into health, how much that would cost. I wonder if it would be anywhere near $3 billion and $14 billion. Do you know what I mean? It's like this would be the time to actually drive money into things rather than say we can't afford this and then everyone's worse off.
Now, I know your viewers tonight want to talk about productivity at 9:15 in the evening, but in terms of this is one of the classic problems in New Zealand. We have this boom bust cycle that stuff gets done, stuff doesn't get done, people get laid off. You can do things during these downturn periods where you can say, okay, what can we invest in so that when the good times return, which inevitably they will do, they don't instantly turn into inflation. They don't instantly turn into the things we want to stop. So we can invest in transport infrastructure. We can invest in housing. Good Lord, if all we did was to pay people to build housing between now and the next time we see growth really return, we would have done untold good. Instead, we've stopped the state housing build program. We see Fletchers and Downers laying off staff right now, probably the two biggest construction firms in the country. Where are those skills going? Well, they're not hanging around. And so we have to replace those when the good
Mm.
times turn back up. That slows down our ability to grow. So
Yeah.
there's a very deliberate reason why economists promote what we call counter-cyclical spending. So when there's a really good time, you stop spending. You allow the market to grow. When there's a really bad time, that's the time for the government to step in and intervene and to balance those demands, those for goods and services. Right now, GDP is about to fall again. So we're about to enter a period of lower growth, no growth, declining growth. We're seeing unemployment rise. The market is estimating that, so the private banks have unemployment rising to about 5.5%. I think personally, that's actually a bit optimistic. But if you want some idea of what that means, that puts a further 30,000 people in unemployment.
Yeah. Wow.
And so as a consequence, there's lots of things we can be doing, and we should be doing. So having a plan, getting things done, and lifting that demand so that actually we don't just force people through the cycle to suffer the consequences of actions that they're not responsible for.